What is up, my fellow educators? Say, do you ever ask your students to talk about things or call on them? Oh, wait. Of course you do. But if you're interested in upping your teacher game and becoming a more culturally responsive teacher with discussion and response protocols, this video is for you. I want to talk about how to provide an explicit structure to the discussions and responses that are happening in your room. Let's just call these structures protocols. And a culturally responsive teacher can use these protocols as an opportunity to validate and affirm cultural behaviors that are traditionally left out of school and instruction, while also using these protocols as an opportunity to build and bridge our students to more traditional academic expectations. VABB, vabbing, or in this case, instructional vabbing. Here's a quick breakdown. On the left are cultural behaviors that our students bring into our rooms every single day, but are generally not validated and affirmed by traditional school culture. On the right is a counterpart of that very same cultural behavior that school generally expects of our students. Now, the whole idea behind being culturally responsive is that we want to validate and affirm this side while figuring out how to build and bridge our students to this side. Let's take a moment to look at one specific cultural behavior, sociocentrism. You may have heard the phrase, whoever is doing the talking is doing the learning. Sociocentrism for us essentially means that talking is good. And when we build opportunities for our students to talk into our lessons, we are validating and affirming that cultural behavior. Plus, when our classroom has opportunities where talking is appropriate and other times where talking is not appropriate, that gives us the opportunity to teach situational appropriateness. But sociocentrism is just one cultural behavior that our students bring into the room every day. By validating and affirming and building and bridging, hopefully our students develop the global dexterity to exist comfortably on both of these lists. Okay. So let's talk about what you can do about it and how discussion and response protocols are an opportunity for you to instructionally VAB your students. Let's talk about a basic discussion protocol, the turn and talk. Maybe you've heard of it, but instead of asking our students to just talk about it or think about it, saying turn and talk to a neighbor clarifies the expectations for each student on how they should discuss the material. Now, a culturally responsive teacher is going to let their students know when a cultural behavior like sociocentrism is being validated and affirmed in their class. Something like this. Now, I want to validate the sociocentric learners in the room by giving you an opportunity to talk to each other while you discuss the answer to this. But we also want our students to respond, maybe hold them accountable for doing the tasks at hand. So let's bring in a basic response protocol, roll them. Maybe each table in your room has a number, and each seat at the table has another number. So you should be able to roll a 1 and a 2 and be able to get an answer from that student. And they should be ready to go because they've had time to discuss and prepare their response. It's also random and involuntary, which encourages accountability and engagement. And when you explain that Roll'em validates and affirms spontaneity, you're being culturally responsive. It also builds and bridges to academia's expectation of individual accountability. You can say that too. And just like that, you've set up a framework in your classroom where everyone is an important member of the classroom community, everyone is engaged and accountable, and the underrepresented cultural assets that our students bring into the room every day are being seen in a positive light. So when it comes to CLR, or culturally and linguistically responsive teaching and learning, you want to think about your protocols and ask yourself if you have a high quantity of protocols, or number of different protocols operational, if you have a high quality of those protocols, as in you're using them with fidelity and accuracy, and if you're using them strategically and for the right purpose. If you've got all those three things going on, that's CLR. That's culturally and linguistically responsive teaching and learning. Now, many protocols seem simple, but once you let go of control and your students try them out, you might realize that the fidelity of your execution or the strategy behind it isn't quite where you thought it was. And worse, if it falls flat, you might be tempted to leave it and never touch that protocol again. A good example of this came up in a math lesson I observed where the teacher wanted to use a whip around protocol. Now, the whip around is where you quickly whip around the room getting answers from a sample of students. Problem is, this teacher wanted all 30 of their students to respond, and they were using this for a particularly difficult math problem. So the first student responds 92, and the second student responds 92. And you can maybe see what happened from there. No one in the entire room was going to share a different answer. So really all we got was the joy of hearing 30 different voices say the number 92. So even the whip around can be deceptively tricky if you're not thinking about the quality and the strategy behind the protocol. Here's another example with the protocol Post Your Thoughts. You see, you give your students a question or a topic, they write their responses on the sticky notes and stick them to the table. But here's the problem. What are the expectations for participation? How long do I have to do this? Is it 5 minutes or 5 seconds? And what am I supposed to write on these? Can I just do a smiley face and call it done, or do I have to put an entire essay on here? And how do I know when I'm done? Do I need to do 5 of these or 10 of these, or? You see, it might seem simple, but if you don't think about the expectations you have for your students and the strategy behind it, the protocol can fall flat. And there you have it. Like all things in teaching, this is going to require some practice and some planning for it to really work in your classroom. So when you're rolling out new protocols, remember to do these things. Define the context. Talk about the why and the how and the norms of the protocol. Pre-teach the skills your students are going to need, like active listening, hypothesizing, interpreting, or drawing conclusions. And provide accountability. Talk about the timing, the roles, and the product the student should have at the end. With all that in mind, here are a few more tips and tricks to help you roll out discussion and response protocols in your classroom. Start by adding some high utility protocols that you can use in a variety of different situations and don't require a lot of planning or preparation. And then keep adding more, especially when it's time to spice things up, eventually moving on to the more advanced protocols. Explicit instruction is key to developing these protocols as routines in your classroom. Reteaching and revisiting will be necessary. Connecting your protocols to specific cultural behaviors is key. What are you validating and affirming? Or what are you building and bridging to? Collaborate with your colleagues to get ideas for which protocols work well in different situations, and get the benefit of their pro tips from the planning and the strategy that they've already implemented. Part of any protocol is the outcome, and you want to make sure that the outcome is worth the work you're doing to get there. Sometimes teachers give this non-meaty prompt and have their students do all of this spinning and moving and writing only to figure out when their birthday is. Now, maybe you're worried all these protocols are going to take way too much instructional time and it's not going to be worth it. Trust me, you're going to get your time back with this one. Verbally processing helps students mentally process. Structured discussion helps students own their learning. And interactions foster connections and a sense of collectivity in your room. But the best reason to bring these protocols into your room is the intangible. It's the vibe you create when your students are talking and connecting with each other and connecting with you in an environment that's fair and equitable and values all of its members. So have fun bringing discussion and response protocols into your classroom as you up your teacher game on your journey to cultural responsiveness.